Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. I wanted to take another look at the upcoming eviction crisis that is coming. Now, where, of course, we've talked a lot about, the homeless issue that will result and, you know, the obvious residential issues. But this is also impacting business in a very large way. I've talked a lot about corporate profits. Um, so why are all these businesses, which has a direct impact on the economy, because businesses close, jobs cease to exist, et cetera, et cetera. Um, why, when we talk about corporations, a large part of this has to do with them closing down locations to preserve their profit margin, to pay their stockholders dividends, and to pay off loans that they've been running in debt for years. Um, you know, if you listen to independent economists, they're always talking about the monetization of debt. And no, don't start talking about MMT on my comment section. I'm not even going to grace you with a response. I have nothing to do with that conversation. I've stated what I think about MMT, and it's all a capitalist wet dream. There's no reality to it. Um, so let's not talk about it at all. But then there are other reasons for the closures of all of these retail locations, and that comes down to the cost of rent, mortgage, etc. And this is something that is impacting small businesses. We've talked about there being 25,000 expected retail closures this year, but that's only counting corporate retail outlet closures. That's not even counting, pardon the hiccups, that's not even counting small businesses, which will be 4, 5, or more times the number of retail closures. Let me pause this for a second, get rid of these hiccups. All right, hopefully the hiccups are gone. So, what is the main reason for the small business closures? Especially service industries like restaurants and so forth. Yes, some part of this has to do with wages, but and the cost of utilities, insurance, etc. But a huge part of it has to do with keeping up with the rent to keep the business open. They could reduce their supplies because of a lower business level. They can reduce employee hours. Many small businesses are family owned, and wages are not so much of an issue if the family is keeping the business alive with their own labor. So what you would be left with if you remove the rent from these issues, then all you're left with is supplies, insurance, and just basic overhead costs. Well, let's take another look at what the mortgage and retail issue implies. There is no reason, and I've mentioned this before, there is no reason that banks have to collect rent, etc., from property owners right now. There's no reason for it. This is all about the banks trying to all get bigger and more profitable. It's about the investors in the banks insisting on returns on loans. And yet the Federal Reserve is handing out money like it's flowing like water to the banks. So the banks don't have a liquidity crisis. It's only the businesses that have a liquidity crisis. So what if the banks suspended or reduced the mortgage requirements, the loan requirements for the time being? What if businesses were able to pay, 10%, 15% of their normal rent on, business property? How many businesses would not be failing, including corporate businesses? There would still be more corporate businesses failing than small businesses if this were to happen. So all of this comes down to the main problem is the banks. Okay, they loaned out that money is owed back. That doesn't mean that they have to collect it right now. It's still in their accounts payable. If you know anything about accounting, it still remains in their accounts payable. You can adjust the end date for a loan during a financial crisis like this. They could be doing this. They're not going to. They think that they will. If a business fails, what happens? Oh, well, then the business owner gets sued. Look at the Gap. Simon Properties is suing the Gap. Well, this happens with small businesses as well. They sign a lease. They have no choice but to break the lease. Well, the property is still available to rent. The property management company tries to sue the small business owner, who winds up maybe having to declare bankruptcy to avoid having to pay whatever the property management company tries to take from them. And yet, what the property management company literally does is now they're not collecting rent. What do? If they charge $1,000 a month for a retail space, now they're not collecting it. What do? They claim that as a loss on their taxes. It's all about profit. The retail property management companies, they could afford to, if the banks were not demanding payment, then the property management company needs what? They only need to keep enough money to pay their employees and their own office space and utilities, employees, etc. They don't have to pay anything out. Oh, but they're corporate, so they've got to pay their investors. So you got the investors in the banks demanding a profit. The investors in the corporate retail property management company demanding a profit. You've got retail outlets whose investors are demanding a profit. The banks and Wall Street investors, these are the enemies. These are the ones causing the problems. Without them, we would not be facing this massive unemployment crisis, this massive coming eviction crisis. And the same is true with residential property. If the banks were not and mortgage companies were not demanding an immediate profit right now, we would not be facing massive homelessness, massive unemployment, etc. The long-term effects of all of this on the economy is going to be more horrendous than anything that we have ever seen before. This is already as bad as the Great Depression in the 1930s in certain respects, but expect it to get much worse. The best thing that we can do is try to get rezoning for our residential properties to be used as businesses, barter with other people, with neighbors and in the local community, and try to survive however we can. If you have friends, relatives that are facing eviction and you've got additional room in your home, offer it up to them. I'm not saying without any compensation or in some way, like cleaning house, helping with yard work, if they have any kind of income, that they help pay somehow. But we have to help each other. We don't have a choice right now. And in the coming weeks, not months, not years, but weeks, this is going to be more and more crucial. So, when you look at who the so-called enemy is, stop blaming Russia, stop blaming China, stop blaming immigrants. Stop blaming people, members of other parties. Stop blaming Trump. This has been coming for a long time, and I've been talking about it for years. This has been coming. We should have been expecting it. This year we're seeing 25,000 corporate retail closures. Well, last year we saw 9,000. The year before we saw 5,000. The year before we saw 8,000. Why are we seeing all these retail closures? This has been coming. We know that the student loan crisis is here and has been here. We know that fewer and fewer people are able to buy houses, and this has been declining since 2008 at least. The number of vehicle loan failures or defaults has been climbing since at least 2014. So this is not a surprise. It's been coming. It's been happening. And now United Airlines, after taking billions, $25 billion, I think, from the U.S. government, is going to lay off, 36,000 people as of October 1st. So what if the money that had been handed to them had been given to homeowners and consumers instead? What would that have done for the economy? We'll never know now, will we? It's all gone. What if the money that had been handed to the oil companies had been handed to consumers instead? Would we be worrying about the end of the $600 additional unemployment ending at the end of July or sooner? We wouldn't be worrying about this. Why is it we can afford to keep building bombs and bailing out corporations, but we can't support our own people? The answers are simple. The answers have been there. The answers have been obvious. Stop thinking in corporate terms. Stop talking about how corporations create jobs. They don't. They destroy jobs. The fact that they took so much money from the, Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, most of it went to corporations and businesses, etc., that don't create any jobs at all. They lay off more people than they have created jobs for, but they turn around and upped their stock margin, their stock value. They handed out profits to their corporate executives. It's time to understand just what's really going on here. All right, that is it for this episode. Please share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can, please donate $1 a month and help to expand the channel. And I hope you have a good day.